G'day, and welcome to another AC Solar Warehouse webinar by the AC Academy. And today's webinar is going to be on the Sigenergy SigenStack products. I can see that we've got the queue filling up quickly, so I might just give it, might ease into this to allow people to join. And today, my name is Stuart Fordyce, so I'm the Sales and Operations Manager here at AC Solar Warehouse. And with me, I've got Andy Klink, who is one of our account managers, our electrical engineers, and is also our resident Sigenergy product specialist. So Andy and I will be talking today about a bunch of different things about SigenStack. I was also going to be introducing Mark Colwell from Sigenergy, but unfortunately, thanks to a super typhoon, one of the many consequences of that is that Mark is stranded somewhere in an airport, probably having Macca's for dinner, trying to get home to Australia. So he won't be joining us this afternoon, but Andy and I will be covering off on the Sigenergy's part and going through everything today with you. And of course, this chat, there's a chat room here, so you can chuck any questions in at any time. The chat is moderated, so you might notice a little bit of a delay between you asking a question and it coming through to the chat room. And that's just so we can control the flow of how many questions come in, because it might flood in pretty quickly with how many people we've got in this webinar today. All right, today, so I want to start off by talking about Sigenergy generally. For anybody who is new to Sigenergy or possibly hasn't heard of it, I'll go through a bit of that. And as well, we're also seeing a little bit of chatter on Facebook about some of the things being said and theorized about Sigenergy, and particularly their financial position. So I'll talk to that as well for anybody who would like an update on that. And then we will look at the product suite, the SigenStack products, what they do, just broadly, and look at what the products are used for and how they can be used. And after that, Andy is going to go dig into the technical side of things and look at the product specifics, as well as the different configurations, how they can be used, and that sort of stuff. And afterwards, I'm really excited to announce that we will be launching a new engineering service here at AC Solar Warehouse for our customers, and that is a commercial storage modeling software solution. Now, that's something we get asked a lot about, that from our customers that we work with them in this commercial energy storage space. But with the introduction of the SigenStack product, we see this product dominating that space the same way that SigenStore has dominated the residential space. Their product is very unique, and it's got a very wide use of applications, because it's such a flexible and unique product. And we've already started seeing a lot of inquiries come through for the commercial modeling aspect. So, you know, it's quite a complicated thing, and our job at AC Solar Warehouse is to try and make that as simple as possible. So if anybody wants to stick around, if you're looking at getting into that, if you already do it, that'll be the last 10 minutes of today's session. And then we'll leave a bit of time if we've got some time to do some Q&A, but we'll try to do that in the chat room as we go along. All right, for anybody who's new to AC Solar Warehouse, we've been around since 2011, almost coming up to our 15th birthday, which is exciting. We're a specialist wholesaler first and foremost. We don't carry everything, but the products that we do carry, we really stand behind and we really believe in. We're not just a wholesaler, we also have an entire engineering division and an entire switchboard building division. So our AC board division has been going since 2017, and we build around about 5,000 switchboards a year that go into residential and commercial solar systems. And for anybody who has watched our SigenStore webinars, you'll know that we also build the custom gateways for Sigenergy as well, which is a fun project we do on the side. We have 10 electrical engineers here at AC Solar Warehouse, 3 of whom are our product specialists, and that's something we're really proud of. It enables us to do things like we're doing today, offer these commercial modeling services, and also do engineering and technical support for our customers as well. And a little fun fact about us, if you didn't know, we're 100% Australian and 100% employee owned. So every time you deal with someone at AC Solar Warehouse, you're actually getting the privilege of dealing with a business owner, which is good. And that's something we take a lot of pride in here at AC Solar Warehouse. All right, let's dive into these products. So if you didn't know about Sigenergy, they are I'll keep this short and sweet because I assume everybody knows most about Sigenergy already. They are a bit of a global behemoth in the storage and solar space. And looking at specifically about the products, the SigenStack products we're going to look at today, there's a whole bunch of case studies that we can show you about how what's happening here in Australia isn't just happening in Australia, it's happening in a lot of other countries, particularly in Europe. And these case studies really give an insight to that, where we've got anywhere from a 200 kilowatt hour project all the way up to 20 megawatt hour projects using the products we're going to look at today. So if you've got a project that fits in that space, Sigenergy has the products for you. And yeah, we'll get into them. Now, one of the questions we are asked a lot is what's the crossover between SigenStack and SigenStore? And the simple answer is probably in the round about 100 kilowatt range, 100 kilowatt or 200 kilowatt hour range of system. The gateways for the SigenStore go up to 60 kilowatts currently, and that product is capable, the SigenStore product range is capable of doing much larger systems than 60 kilowatts. It's just that their default gateways stop at 60, and anything beyond that, you can get in touch with ACL Warehouse and we can design and quote and build custom switchboards for you to do bigger systems. And there's a lot of case studies all around the world of SigenStore being used up to megawatt hour projects, I should say. So there's no SigenStore can be used for projects, and it is being used for large projects. But when SigenStack comes on the scene, it does reach a crossover point financially around that medium commercial space, sort of 100 kilowatts or 200 kilowatt hours and beyond, where the SigenStack becomes far more financially viable. If you want a gateway, you're still going to have to look at the custom gateway option, but I'd say that's a rough rule of thumb now to work off if you're looking at quoting projects. All right, so Sigenergy. The company itself is about 3 years old, and the most common question we get is, how can you trust a company that's only 3 years old? That's a very valid point, but the director or the owner, or founder I should say, of Sigenergy, Tony Zhu, came from Huawei, and he was the man behind Huawei for many years and took them from where they were to one of the largest companies in the world. And he took that that knowledge and experience and applied a vision of having a completely unique product that changes the game, that leads the space in tech and flexibility. And he's done that really, really well with the SigenStore product. And in the 3 years they have been around, they have kicked some enormous goals, one of which being the fastest company to $1 billion turnover in the solar industry. And there are a lot of questions at the moment about Sigenergy's attempt to IPO the business and get it listed on Hong Kong Stock Exchange. And there's a few rumours going around on Facebook and within the industry that it has been a failed attempt at an IPO. It's not necessarily the case. For context, on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, usually businesses that are less than 5 years old don't get considered because they're pretty much considered an unestablished business. But when we look at this graph particular and the next slide about some of their achievements in the last couple of years, the situation with Sigenergy is more or less unprecedented. And to enable the growth that Sigenergy is going through, what it's going to go through over the next several years, an IPO is really important, but they're trying to jump through those hoops of getting an IPO on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange as a business less than 5 years old, and it's something that's really difficult to do. The important thing to remember is that Sigenergy has been profitable for quite some time now, so profitability and growth trajectory, the two biggest things to be concerned about, or the two things to be focused on when you're looking at the stability of a company, they're all there. And they've got a lot of backing, professionally as a business. They've got a lot of growth trajectory, so a lot of interest in Sigenergy. We as a business don't feel there is any risk to them going away anytime soon. I feel like that's just a bit of worrying about some of the bad PR around the IPO not being successful this time. But Sigenergy will continue to try and IPO that as quickly as possible. And if it takes 5 years, it takes 5 years, but we'll see how we go. Like I said, they're very prominent in a lot of countries at the moment, particularly in Europe and Australia. Some of their most successful countries at the moment. They're really seeing rapid growth. And this slide here just shows a little bit of about where Sigenergy are today on the scale of things. They're number one in energy storage in terms of shipments. And like I said before, they're the fastest company in the solar industry to reach $1 billion revenue annual turnover. And this isn't to put down any other brand in the solar industry, but just for comparison, like I said before, in terms of trying to get an IPO, that's something that usually takes a decade or so of business to get to those sorts of numbers. To do that within 2 years is essentially unprecedented. So Sigenergy are definitely playing by different rules. And yeah, we're definitely giving them the lenience to do so. Now, manufacturing capacity is something that's on the tip of everyone's tongue at the moment. With the growth that Sigenergy are going through, as well as the growth that the market is going through in Australia, thanks to the cheaper home batteries rebate, manufacturing is something that is getting a lot of attention at Sigenergy. They are bringing on a new factory at the moment, which will really ramp up at the beginning of next year, which is about 7 times their current capacity. And that will accommodate enough growth for the immediate future, immediately, as well as the near future as well. But again, we're talking about something that's relatively unprecedented, and Sigenergy are going from strength to strength at the moment. And warehousing manufacturing is something that will definitely ease with time because of the steps that Sigenergy are taking. All right, let's crack into the SigenStack specifically now. This image here shows you a little bit about what SigenStack would look like. Obviously, there's no bollards, there's no labels. You might argue, or you definitely would argue, that it's not compliant, but it gives you a vibe of what this could look like on a small commercial or medium commercial installation. Now, the inverters are broken down into 3 different categories. They have and just going back to this slide here, so we've obviously got stacks of batteries here, and we have the inverter on the side. And that's the 3 next slides we're going to look at. So the 3 different types of inverters are PV only. So this is just a general commercial inverter within the Sigenergy product roadmap. This is something you'd use on a commercial install and goes up to 125 kilowatts. This is something that we see becoming really popular because of their tech, their commissioning time, their reliability, and also how competitive they are in the pricing space. The second type of inverter is a battery ready, but not suitable for off-grid. So this one's going to be available in 50, 110, and 125 kilowatts, and isn't suitable for backup, but is suitable to have the SigenStack battery attached to it. And the third, of course, is the hybrid battery-ready off-grid inverter. So this is what they call the HYB. You'll see that come up in the SKUs on price lists. And it's battery-ready, off-grid ready. Now, the first 2 inverters are currently on the water, and we expect them to land sometime in the next 2 to 3 weeks or so. So if you are looking at using them for a project, it is an opportunity to pre-order now to get an allocation of this stock. Now, this stock isn't currently CEC compliant. It's been sitting with the CEC for over 5 months now. And the original guidance from the CEC was around late August, maybe September, for that to come through. And we're well and truly ready for that to happen. And that's the only real constriction on these products being installed widely and being widely usable in the market. Now, the first 2 inverters are going to be readily available as soon as the CEC compliance is, with the exception of this hybrid inverter. We're looking at a fairly restricted supply of the hybrid off-grid inverter initially until production eases, just because of the popularity of this particular inverter in other countries. But hopefully by the time we get to CEC compliance, that isn't so much of an issue. But if it happens tomorrow, there's your disclaimer. But of course, we are taking pre-orders for this stuff. So if you do want to get your hands on it, you're better off putting yourself in the queue now to secure some of it. All right, gateways. There are 2 large commercial and utility scale size gateways. Now, these won't be available for the first 6 to 9 months of the SigenStack product being available on the market. But it gives you a bit of an insight into what is to come in this space. We're typically seeing not too many projects require that complete off-grid or that complete backup solution. So Sigenergy are putting all their effort into bringing in the on-grid stuff first and getting that into market, and then making room and focusing on this stuff later. But of course, if you do have any large SigenStack projects, it is something that AC Solar Warehouse can do to build custom gateways for larger projects. So get in touch if you have anything in that space that you need to action. Now, this is something I'll touch on later in the modeling space about what batteries can be used for. I'll just skip over this actually, because any of you doing battery space, you know exactly what they're used for. We've got unstable grids, remote regions, dynamic export. That's a very common one that we come across, where private companies are looking at doing a transformer upgrade to increase their load capacity on site. But the cost of doing so could actually be put towards a battery storage investment, which you not only get an asset as your business that you can use to generate revenue, but it also saves you from needing an extra transformer. So then you can partake in PPP, FCAS, you can look at self-consumption, and also chopping off peak demand charges, and also a bit of arbitrage if you have that available for your BMSP. Now, with the SigenStore product, there is one of the really cool features that SigenStore has is a 0 millisecond changeover, and that enables them to not only offer a UPS functionality, but to offer pretty much the gold standard of UPS functionality. So if you're looking at doing sensitive plant equipment, or hospitals, or any sort of projects like that where they have really sensitive equipment and they want the gold standard, this is a feature that's going to also be available in the SigenStack product. And on top of that, they also have a 10-second, 150% peak demand surge rating on their inverters, which Sigenergy also pride themselves on being industry leading in that sense for products in this space. So it's a modular design. Like we saw at the beginning, there are projects that use these up to 20 megawatt hours, so very large projects. You can actually scale these stacks of batteries about 100 stacks, which enables you to get about 25 megawatt hours of storage without requiring any additional hardware to combine those stacks. In the sense that you can just install 100 stacks of SigenStack, parallel them together, wire the comms together, and you can commission that in 15 minutes, just like you can with the SigenStore. Whether you're commissioning 1 stack or 100 stacks in parallel, it's a 15-minute commissioning time, exactly the same as the SigenStore. So that's a really cool feature about how flexible this product is, and Sigenergy's architecture of being completely modular. And they've gone with this route over the container shipment or the rack-mounted plant equipment as well, and we'll get into the benefits of that in the next few slides. Here's an example of if your site has a real estate constriction, you are very limited on where you can put hardware for battery storage. You've got limited hard stand. then the pad-mounted option or container-mounted option might not be appropriate. Where with the slim modular design, it really allows you to get creative. And there was an example right at the beginning about, I'll just snip back there actually. If you look closely here, this is something we probably wouldn't do in Australia, but in Spain they had really limited space. The only space they had on facility was between their warehouse wall and their racking. There's about 1,200 mil of space, and they managed to put the batteries in there. Compliant in Spain, probably wouldn't get away with in Australia. If you had a little bit more room, it would work so you can service it. But it's a testament to how flexible this product can be, and it really allows you to get creative and get bespoke. So it's not just you need 50 square meters per pad-mounted inverter. And like I said before, under 100 stacks, it's a completely loggerless system. So you don't need a central brain for the system, or you don't need that single point of failure where, especially if you've got an export requirement and it's being managed by a centralized brain, you don't want that to cause downtime, particularly when you're talking megawatt hours of storage. Very expensive when it can come down to a $200 or $300 piece of hardware that's in control of that. Sigenergy have gone down the completely loggerless path. If you were going to do projects beyond 25 megawatt hours, firstly, you'd be the biggest in the world for Sigenergy, that'd be great. But then you can look at alternative options for that. And yeah, in terms of flexibility, the modularity, like I said, if you're doing pad mount, you need a crane to do anything with them. And that can be fine if you're at the site. It usually does cost a lot more to have specialized trucks or lifting equipment to lift things into place. The modularity, however, does mean that you can get things into places that you couldn't get them before. If you're building a new building and you can, pull, or you can pull the roof off halfway through the build and install this stuff after the fact, that's fine for crane access. But if you want to take it piece by piece into an internal plant room and assemble this, then that's something you can't do with a pad-mounted option or those large shipping container options as well. So Sigenergy is really bringing a product to market that's going to enable retailers and EPCs to do things that actually weren't achievable before. If you had a concrete bunker style plant room and you wanted to fit 3 megawatt hours of storage in there, you might not be able to do it. Or it might not be as easily done than it is now. And we think that's pretty revolutionary. General specs, all the inverters have a DC max input voltage range of up to 1250 volts. Again, Sigenergy like to be at the top of their game and like to be industry leading with this stuff. So they've given us a little bit of headspace, a little bit of headroom in there for a bit of flexibility with string design, with that bit of extra voltage range. As well as weight, they're trying to keep down the weight, especially that these are often a 2-person install, and we don't want what we saw with panels over the last decade is they just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they hit as soon as they hit about 23 kilos, everyone started just saying, "No, that's it. Panels are too heavy. I'm sick of lifting them. Let's call it." And innovations like this from Sigenergy really help set the standard of what inverters should weigh. And if, as a manufacturer, if you're going to expect 2 people to install this, you can't just keep making it heavier and heavier and heavier. So it's good to see that weight actually come down. Hopefully that means a few less broken backs out there. In tech, the automatic phase sequencing or arbitrary wiring is something that can really save you if you've ever accidentally made a simple mistake on site that's reversible. It can save you a site visit that you can not only change this stuff remotely, change your phase sequencing on your CTs, but it can automatically detect it and automatically adjust it if you've made a mistake. And that can save you, like I said, a trip to site. It can also save you significant downtime on a site if it's a sensitive project. Commissioning, like I said before, 15 minutes, just like the SigenStack product. whether you've got 1 stack or 100. And the other interesting thing is that when you use SigenStack in your designs and your tender applications, is that the operation, like the ongoing maintenance costs and maintenance regimes of these products are not specified in the warranty document. Now that puts the onus on, a little bit of the onus on us as businesses to make sure we're being responsible with how we install this. But the product itself is designed to include all the management sensors and environmental situational circumstances. It's built for that so that you don't need to have these external sensors that need ongoing maintenance and scheduled work. So things like air conditioning, smoke sensors, power, temperature sensors, all those are things that are built into the product. They have temperature sensing across the entire unit. They have smoke detection within every single module. They have individual cell monitoring as well, like we'll go into here. The active balancing of cells allows every single cell to be managed individually. So these are things that they can save you in general ancillary costs when you're quoting up projects. And the ongoing maintenance costs can really stack up, especially if you're talking remote sites. So anything that can be done remotely from native hardware is a real bonus. Now, active balancing, this is something that often gets overlooked on projects, particularly if you're looking at building your own systems where you're getting your own battery stack and a third-party inverter, where if you don't have active battery balancing across your modules, what can happen, like, you know, initially when you install the project, it's not so much of a concern because you have a fairly consistent state of charge across your batteries from the factory, and they all have very similar performance. But if you fast forward 5-10 years down the track, where you're seeing a varied performance across the modules, which is just natural in any electronic components, what you can have is in a stack that's in series, for example, if you have one cell and they're not actively balanced, if that cell or module gets down to 1% and you still have modules at 20, 30%, that's an exaggerated example. What it can do is it can register that entire stack at a 1% state of charge and stop it from discharging. And that means that you'll have energy capacity of that stack that's unusable. And without active balancing, more and more of that stack becomes unusable with time because of that effect. So the active balancing is essentially how, when we do performance modeling for customers, this is actually assumed, where there's not many modeling softwares that I know of that assumes this unbalancing effect in software without you having to manually account for it at the 5, 10, 15, 20 year mark. So that's a real benefit of what SigenStack do. And like I said before, the full coverage, temperature sensing, fire extinguishing unit, smoke detection, all included in the unit and visible through monitoring on the front end and the back end. Arc fault detection, Sigenergy, the SigenStack inverters can offer arc fault detection and system shutdown up to 500 meters in length. That's electrical length from the inverter. And that's something that's really important for asset management and visibility of the life of the asset. And then just generally speaking, the benefits of DC coupled, one of the things that's really revolutionary about the SigenStack product is that it enables the benefits of DC coupling battery storage to be scaled well beyond residential and small commercial systems. What we typically see is a lot of larger systems, if you get 100 kilowatts and above, a lot of those systems, when they add energy storage, it's AC coupled. And that serves a purpose. It does the job perfectly fine. But the benefits of having a DC coupled battery storage solution are not only a greater efficiency. On average, you're looking at probably a 1 to 2% gain in energy consumption, energy usage, and you're also looking at minimizing the amount of clipping you're getting from your DC array, particularly when your scaling is up to 1, 2, 4, 5 megawatt systems. These small percentages can really equate to some serious dollars. And that's what's quintessentially really exciting about the SigenStack product, is that it enables us to start taking those benefits to larger systems. Another cool feature that Sigenergy offer is, we talk about arbitrage, where you can, or if you've got a demand tariff where you can charge when the rate is low and discharge when the rate is high. And if you've got a fixed tariff structure, that's something that's easy to program. However, you also have your own consumption, you have weather patterns that change your production, and there's a lot of moving parts. And if you set your battery up to just do arbitrage and you're not using it yourself, that's fine. You can use your battery that way if that's what you want out of it. However, if you want to not only reduce your energy bills, but maximize the return on investment, Sigenergy have an AI feature that can look at your expected production, your typical consumption, what's happening with your tariffs, whether that's a live tariff structure, like if you're accessing the live price of energy, and it can make decisions on whether you charge and discharge depending on the parameters you put in. And this is a real life example of a commercial system. It was 20 kilowatts of inverter capacity and 32 kilowatt hours of battery. And with the AI mode, compared with a maximized self-consumption mode, it yielded a savings of 48% on electricity bills. Now, 48% is huge. That's not something you could expect every time, but it does showcase some of the tech options that are available through Sigenergy now and what we can expect in the future as this stuff gets more and more techy. All right, that's it. I powered through that. Obviously, it's a bit to take in, but I'm going to hand that over to Andy now to talk us through some of the use cases for this product and what they look like in different configurations. Over to you, Andy.
Thanks, Stu. Thanks again for joining us, everybody. Hopefully my microphone's on and everyone can hear me. Just give us a shout in the chat if you can't. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the different products that are involved with the SigenStack system. Just a bit of a breakdown on all of the individual components that you might need to install, as well as a few different installation configurations and examples based on the different products that are available. So we've got a bit of a snapshot here of all of the components that make up a SigenStack system, and a bit of a breakdown as to which component is which. So number one is our Sigen hybrid inverter. So, and in Australia, I believe we'll be getting the 50 kilowatt, the 100 kilowatt, 110 kilowatt, and 125 kilowatt. And there will be the PV inverter, the HYA inverter for grid-connected battery storage, and the HYB inverter for any backup systems or off-grid systems. Now, the hybrid inverter is then connected to the battery controller. So that's basically the DC-DC converter between the battery stack and the inverter. We've then, underneath the battery controller, we've got all of our 12 kilowatt hour battery modules. So under your main stack, you've got the battery controller and you've got a main base underneath here, and any additional stacks you have in parallel with that. We've then got sub bases, which is number 6 here. And we've got just covers that sit on top of all of the other stacks that don't have the battery controller on top, just to seal everything off. They also come with lifting handles, similar to the Sigen Store batteries. Now, the 12 kilowatt hour batteries will be quite a bit heavier, and so I suppose the recommendation at the moment is that these handles could be used to lift the modules up to about waist height. Anything above that might be safer to use some additional equipment, such as a forklift or similar, to lift the modules up to where you need to get them on top of the stacks. So just some kind of design principles for the SigenStack and the battery stacks. So there's a minimum of 4 modules, so minimum of 48 kilowatt hours, and then a maximum of 21 modules per SigenStack inverter. So that gets you up to about 252 kilowatt hours with the 12 kilowatt hour modules. And so the maximum stack height that you really want to try and stick to is 5 modules in the stack. And if you're doing the full system with 21 modules, you can have one stack with a max height of 6 modules connected back to your inverter. With the battery controllers, we've got a couple of different types. So there's a battery controller for your kind of maximum system size of 20 or 21 modules. And then anything under that, we need to get this SKU here, which is the BST, or the boost battery controller. And that's just required for any smaller stacks to boost the voltage up to the required input for the inverter. And there's also a couple of different types. So a 0.5C and a 1C battery controller, which basically just refers to your discharge rate. So for example, if you've got a 240 kilowatt hour battery stack with the 0.5C controller, you can discharge at 120 kilowatts. If you have the 1C controller, you can discharge at the full 240 kilowatts. So Sigenergy are also going to release this fully integrated base here. So if you're installing a system that has 4 full stacks, this one will be, it will have a main base as well as all of your sub bases all pre-wired, which will make things a little bit easier. But for anything less than that, you can just individually order your main base with your sub bases and just install the cabling when you do the job. So I've got a couple of just basic line diagrams here for some different installation scenarios that you might have. So the first one that we have here is an on-grid storage solution using the HYA inverters. So you might want to do an installation like this for a system where you just want to be able to store your power and use it for self-consumption to save on the energy that you take from the grid, or for any FCAS or VPP uses. Or the other thing you might want to use it for is a load assist system to be able to deliver some more power from the batteries in case you've got some really expensive network upgrade charges, as Stu touched on a little bit earlier on. And so with this configuration using the HYA inverters, you can actually install a maximum of 100 inverters in parallel. So that can actually get you up to a total of 12.5 megawatts of inverter capacity and around 25 megawatt hours worth of energy storage. So some pretty large systems that are possible using this system. And I think we had a question a little bit earlier on. So if you're not doing a backup system, you don't require the Sigenergy gateway, but you would require some kind of distribution board or AC combiner to connect all of the inverters to. So if you're looking at a project like this, please let us know where we can work with you to design any switchboards that you might need for these type of projects. You can also see here that the communications and the products are quite similar to the SigenStore range. So between each of the inverters here, we've just got that same fast Ethernet connection for the communications. For our power sensor, we've got just an RS485. It's the same power sensors between the SigenStore and SigenStack range, which is really handy, and also the same 4G communication module. So working with the same range of accessories, which is really good. So this is an example. So using the HYB inverters, which can give you your backup power, you can actually install a maximum of 3 of these in parallel for a backup system. And they, so the inverters, they actually have a grid port and a backup port. So I think we also had a question a little bit earlier on in the chat about a 100 kVA system and whether there's a gateway coming for this. So one solution for that could be, unless you need a generator or things like this, you could actually just use one of the HYB inverters and just use the grid port and the backup port and install this system. And you, in that case, you wouldn't require a gateway. But otherwise, if you do have any other requirements, such as a generator or, probably the generator is the main one, or if you're exceeding 3 HYB inverters in parallel, then you would need to look at installing either a custom gateway through us, or potentially, when they're available, the standardized Sigenergy gateway that they may look at releasing once there's, we've got some case studies out in the market for this product. So as I said here, you've got the all of the inverters connected to this AC combiner here for the non-essential loads. And then out of the backup port from the inverters, there's a backed up distribution board here, so that if you have a power outage, the inverters can flick over to that the backed up distribution board and power those essential loads. Now, this is a similar example, but just adding the generator in. So, and in this case here, we've got the generator, we've actually got an ATS, and the generator is connected to our the grid port of the inverters. So if you have a blackout, we'll switch over to the backed up loads here. And you can also draw power through the grid port of the inverters for any generator backup power that's required if you run into a situation where the batteries need a bit of a top up during a blackout. And a similar example, so as well as just backed up systems, you can also use these inverters for off-grid installations. So this one, probably not recommended installing a system of this size without a backup generator, but it can be done. So yeah, again, maximum 3 units in parallel connected to the backup port. Obviously, with this type of setup, you run the risk of if you don't have enough PV generation or to power your loads and the batteries, eventually you'll run out of power. So I think the generator is always a good addition for an off-grid system like this, but can be done in this configuration. And so we've got the same thing here. So an off-grid system, no gateway, so maximum 3 inverters in parallel, and you've got your generator connected here to the grid port of the HYB inverters, so that you can get that generator backup power in case you fall into a situation where your batteries have gone flat, or you've got no PV generation, etc. Now, these examples move into situations where you'd also install the Sigenergy gateway. So again, with the Sigenergy standardized gateways, their plan is to see how the SigenStack product goes in the market, try and work out what the common requirements are to then bring some gateways to the market. It's quite a complicated and expensive process to certify these type of products in Australia. So they want to get a bit of an idea of what types of configurations are most common, so that they can get those gateways listed and bring those to the market. So initially, with any systems that require gateways, they will require a custom gateway design until there's a bit of an idea about what type of gateways Sigenergy might want to bring to the market. The good thing about having the gateway is that it would allow you to install more than 3 HYB inverters in parallel. So if you've got a larger off-grid or backup system where you need to exceed that amount, and I think that the 3 in parallel gives you about 756 kilowatt hours. So anything larger than that, you might need to look at going to a gateway like this. And it also opens you up to having the backup generator connected to the smart port there. I suppose the generator can also be used without the gateway, but in this case, it will allow you to have the grid, the generator, all running through the gateway here. And yeah, you've got your 2-wire auto start here for the generator as well. And then this is quite a similar example here, but instead of the generator being connected to the smart port here, we've just got a similar setup with the ATS and the generator, so that there's a blackout, it'll change over to the generator supply, and you can draw your any backup power you need from the generator through the grid port of the gateway. And now I think coming up to the last example here, so this would be a purely off-grid system with the gateway and the generator connected as well. So very similar. We've just got the generator connected to the smart port of the gateway here, and all of the inverters running on the other side to power the loads. So I think that takes us through all of the the main configurations, I suppose, that would come up with these inverters. Anything apart from that, like I'm sure there's going to be things that don't quite fit these generic examples and things. So please do come to us if you have any tricky sites or questions that you want some help with offline, and we're happy to help out with which products you need and any gateways that you might need and pricing, etc. So please do reach out to us if you have anything that you want our help with in designing and getting the right products and solutions. So yeah, I'll hand it back to you over there, Stu.
Thanks, Andy. And thank you for all the questions from everyone. We got some good questions going. I couldn't get to all of them, Andy, so I might leave you to answer the rest of them while we crack into the software modeling. All right. Yeah, like I said, I want to talk about modeling and what we can do, what the process looks like through AC Solar Warehouse. If this is a service you might be interested in, many people are asking what's it sort of cost, how can I include that, yada, yada, yada. So we want to try and go through all that today over the next 10 minutes. But first, I want to just get a gauge of all the people that are in here. How many people either, if you're in this webinar, you're probably in the commercial battery space, but how many of you are looking to offer commercial storage modeling, or you do offer it already? Our understanding is that this is pretty prevalent in this space, particularly if you've got really large private installations or private customers, and also for some tender applications require this as well. All right, well, not everyone's voted, but it's pretty much a unanimous 90% of people, which is, yeah, really insightful. Thank you very much for your time answering that. All right, so I'll just get back to this presentation. Now, so about 90% of us are doing modeling, and for anyone who's done that, you'll know that it can be pretty complicated. You can do some pretty basic modeling through some software packages that are available online. There's a few in the industry at the moment that offer performance modeling, financial modeling, particularly for solar systems. When you add a battery, things can obviously get quite a bit more complicated. When you add a VPP, your customer wants to get into FCAS, or you have a fleet of EVs, or you want to look at bidirectional charging on this fleet of EVs, things can get pretty messy. They can get pretty complicated. And often we find that even when we're using this software, we're using maybe 1-2% of the available options or variables that we can model. So it can be pretty complicated. Here at AC Solar Warehouse, we have a couple of people trained up who are experts in this stuff to help your businesses simplify this process. Because like I said, it can be pretty complicated. So we've partnered up with a company called GridCog, and GridCog are one of the leaders in this space. They have a very, very comprehensive modeling tool. And we partner with them because we think that it offers a fantastic solution and that we can help customers, or our customers as in yourselves, win more projects with this stuff. Now, there's a few benefits of what we can do here. One is that when you deal with AC Solar Warehouse, now you can go to GridCog and you can do all the modeling yourself, but you have to get someone who's trained up in your business, who knows how to use the software. You've got to pay licensing and or subscriptions for it. One of the benefits is that you get to just deal with one company when you're procuring your stock, as well as doing your performance modeling for your project. And that enables you to leverage the money you're going to spend with AC Solar Warehouse to save a lot of money on the modeling and generate extra value for your business, whether that's time saving, whether that's a cleaner product because it was all through the one service. That's what we're trying to achieve here. So I'll go through in the next slide a little bit about what that process looks like, and you can each sort of go through that and work out what's the value to your business. But another really important thing about our services is that we offer bi-directional modeling services. And all that means is that, you might have a tender that you want to design, and the tender has already given you the project specifications. It's saying it's this inverter, this number of panels, these batteries, and you've just got to put your costs to that project, and you've got to model the return on investment, because that's what the customer's interested in. Or you've got to model the CO2 emission reduction, because the tender is trying to meet certain ESG requirements. And if that's what you're doing, we can offer that service where we take the design, we model the outcome. But we can also take a desired outcome and model the design and give you some options. And with the help of GridCog, it has a really powerful project variance comparison tool that allows you to give us 10 or 15 variables and say, model them all and give me an analysis of the pros and cons of each and list them in top to bottom on a scale of return on investment or a scale of lowest peak demand, because that's what our initiative is, or lowest on CO2 emissions, because that's what we're trying to achieve. So that's a really powerful thing. You'll typically find with tenders, you're probably doing the former of those two processes. And with the latter of those two processes, we often find people come to us even for a private business investment, where businesses come, they say, oh, I've got a $200,000 grant and I want to invest it in solar and batteries. Oh, my budget's 500 grand, what can I do with it? And we find that our customers sometimes do a bit of a design. They come to us and ask us to model it, where they could come to us and say, look, we've got a budget of $500,000 and here's their loads. We want to model this. I would actually like to go back to my customer and give them a design and a report and say, I've analyzed all these different options for you, all these different variations, and I can guarantee you that I can demonstrate to you that what I'm proposing here is an optimized solution for your business. Because on these, $500,000 jobs, they're big jobs, they're worth the extra effort. And if we can help you go that extra mile with minimal cost or potentially no cost, but a lot of extra value, then we can win those projects together. And that's our goal with this service, is to help you win more projects, and that helps our business grow at the same time. So what does this process look like? So there's no surprises. What it looks like is you come to us and you say, look, AC Solar Warehouse, I've got this project. What can you do? How can you help me? We talk you through all the things I just spoke about what the fees are, how it's going to work, how much time it's going to take. And we come to an agreement of how we're going to proceed. And typically what that looks like is that we will, depending on the type of services and the size of the job, we will say, look, the fee is X, and there is an upfront fee for these modeling services. The beauty of this process is that from there, once we understand what your intention is and we're on agreement about how this is going to work, we then schedule a 30-minute consult with an AC Solar Warehouse modeling expert and it'll likely be our RPQ here at AC Solar Warehouse or one of our engineers in our engineering team. And they will talk you through all the options and understand what you are trying to achieve. And then we can build a plan for what we're going to model and the reports that we're going to generate. And the great thing about this process is that from your perspective, that's 30 minutes of your time to get a comprehensive modeling. Well, it's 30 minutes of consult. You've obviously got to get some data for us, so it might take you a couple of hours there. But it definitely minimizes the amount of time you have to spend on this stuff. And your time is your money, especially when we all have so much on right now in such a busy industry. That can be really powerful. After that, we get all that information. We say, look, give us 1 to 2 weeks. You've obviously got to get the information to us, whether that be load data or whatever. We can simulate that for you as well if you don't have it, or an energy bill. After that, we need about 1 to 2 weeks to model it and issue you the final reports. And when we issue you that final report, we say, look, here's the reports, here's all the information, off you go, win the job. And what we're going to give you is a pseudo credit, essentially, to say, look, when you go and purchase the stock for this project, we will credit X amount of it to compensate you for either a discount on these modeling services or the complete amount. Now, the discount that you get will vary depending on the size of your system, but there is a bit of a sweet spot around that 300-ish kilowatt hour zone, where if you win a job that's around about 300 kilowatt hours, you engage us for those services, you likely won't be out of pocket at the end of it if you win that job. Now, the things that we can model and the things that are really special about GridCog is that often you don't, when you're doing these modeling, when you're going through this modeling process, you don't always have all the data at your fingertips. Yes, you might have load profile data, but there's a lot of stuff that you have to either assume, calculate, or simulate. And the information and data that GridCog uses is all what they call bankable data. It's not just random AI generated in order to give you a report that is not going to mean as much as data that's extracted from validated sources or similar case study profiles, or it can use data from other cases to simulate different types of businesses' loads and all that stuff, but it's bankable data to give you more accurate reports. Now we can take load profile data, we can also simulate load profile data, we can simulate EV fleets, including bidirectional charging, we can simulate all sorts of generation, solar, wind, and that all can be simulated as well. Energy storage, as well as all the financial factors like time of use tariffs, dynamic export, dynamic energy costs, PPAs, VPPs, and FCAS. So all that stuff can be modeled, and pretty much everything you can think of is available through GridCog because they're such a competent software package. Even things like if you come to us and say, look, I'm doing a project where we're fitting battery storage and solar to a transportation company, and in 5 years they want to switch their vehicles out with EVs, and I want to model that variance, and I also want to model the variant of installing them all with bidirectional chargers, assuming it's going to be available then, and I want to input the costs for that, and I want to include that in the financial model, and we can tailor that to what you need. Because at the end of the day, every customer is different. Every customer makes decisions based on different factors. And like I said before, if it's a government project and they've got ESG requirements, they might not be fully focused on the return on investment. They might be trying to reduce emissions or some other factor. And the really powerful project variation comparison is that we can create variance reports based on the factors that are most important to your customer. So that's the sort of stuff that's going to come out in the console. And often what you'll find in your first experience with going through this modeling process is that you're going to get a report you probably didn't anticipate you were going to get. which means that when you're selling these projects, when you're talking to these customers, you're probably not, there's probably value that's out there that you can use to close those deals. So we see ourselves as an extension of your business, and if throughout that consult we can help you uncover a piece of value that you can include in your sales process, that you can take to these conversations and win more projects, then we consider that a really good thing, and that's something we're really proud to be a part of. So that's it. I'll talked enough about modeling software, but if any of you have any questions about anything you've seen today, whether that's in the modeling software, whether you have some technical questions about the SigenStack stuff, whether you want to place a pre-order for SigenStack, please get in touch with AC Solar Warehouse, and we'll do our best to look after you any way we can. And thank you all for attending today, and thank you very much for your time. All of you will get an email in the next day or so with a recording of this, in case you think it's useful to share with someone else in your team or someone else in the industry. But thank you again. Thank you, Andy, for your contribution today. And yeah, we'll open up the floor for a few questions for anything that's unanswered in the chat so far. All right, so we've got a question here from Gibran. Can we design and install battery modules as 1C permanently?
Yeah, there was a similar question a bit earlier on about what's the point in having a 1C battery controller with a 125 kilowatt inverter, which is a fair point, because if you've got a 252 kilowatt hour battery stack, the inverter can't actually discharge that quickly. But I suppose the 1C controller is more for systems where you install maybe only, I suppose, less than 125 kilowatt hours worth of storage, so that you can you can supply that full rate of discharge to the inverter.
Yeah, okay. And one here from Keith Butler, which is, what about motel load profiles? Yes, that is something that's included. That's something that in the consult we can talk you through what different profiles are available if you require us to simulate load data. Because if you don't have load data, or you can't get load data, then we can pick something that's pretty close to that. All I would suggest is that if you come to the meeting with an energy bill, that's something that we ask for as a bare minimum, and we can sort of do some guesstimates based on how motels typically operate for nighttime load and daytime load. Fred Carey asks, is there a checklist and a brief outline that can be sent to customers? Assume, Fred, you're talking about the modeling there. That was asked. Yeah, that was asked a few minutes ago. You're talking about the modeling there. It's not something that we would send you a list of questions just because there is so many. We have the consult purposes as a way of us to really sit with you and understand exactly what you want. Because like I said, if the amount of variables that we're actually using in the GridCog software is often only 1% or 2%, even on a really complex system. So it would be quite a checklist, and you'd probably fall asleep reading it. So we decided to go down the consult method. However, if you want to do a little pre-consult where you just want to understand what sort of things you need to know coming into that, then I suggest giving us a call. We'll put you through to our modeling software team, and we can talk you through that.
There's a question from Abby, which says, for tender purposes, will this information remain confidential and not be disclosed to other installers? So I imagine with our, if somebody engages us to do one of these models, that's only going to be between us and that particular company that engaged us. It wouldn't be.
Yeah, that's exactly right. GridCog has a feature. All their stuff is all their data is very secure. The bankable data I referred to earlier was data that has been on projects where it has been publicly, they've accessed it from sources that they're happy to share that data. But by default, project data is treated as extremely sensitive, and there is an entire segment in the GridCog software that if you want to share information, share project details, it can be done on a discrete and a secure basis. But here with an AC Solar Warehouse, data is only used on your project only. It isn't used anywhere else outside of your project or outside of our business. It's kept completely secure on your project. As well as project names, we would never discuss project details or any customer projects with any of our other customers. The only time we would do that, take it outside the business, is if we were discussing it with a supplier, but that would be with your permission to discuss that sort of stuff. And of course, if it is important enough, it's always important. It's always can always be useful to put an NDA in place if you want some security in your business to make sure that that data gets kept secure in a certain way. Just make sure you let us know.
I've got a question. Yeah, what kind of CSIP interface paths do the CNI inverters support? It's a good question. I do know the SigenStack inverters are capable of FCAS, FCAS trading, that sort of thing. So I'm not sure if that question's in relation to that, or if it's possibly around dynamic export or that sort of thing. But
I would say if you have a specific CSIP requirement, get in touch with us on the details on the screen, and we can involve one of the experts from Sigenergy if that's something that we need a closer look at. That's probably the best way to manage those cases.
Yeah.
We've got time for about one more question. There's one here from Sanjay. Oh no, he's just helping contribute to the answer. No dramas. Well, I think that's it for questions from you all. If there are no further questions, thank you very much for your time. And of course, if you think of any questions after this, please screenshot the screen and get in touch anytime. Well, I say anytime, preferably during business hours. But yeah, feel free to get in touch with us for anything you might have questions around Sigenergy, and we'll do our best to help out. Thanks again for everyone. We'll see you on the next webinar.
Thanks, everybody.